Hello and welcome to the Old Classic Car channel, and this is another brochure review, this time for the Scimitar GTE, the Reliant Scimitar, the owner's book of answers. Now, curiously, I've noticed that going through this particular brochure, there's hardly any mention of the name Reliant. It's almost as if the company were embarrassed to have the Reliant name associated with what was their sporting GT of the time. The only time the name Reliant actually appears is on the rear cover in tiny writing, and in a couple of the sort of magazine review comments that they sort of punctuates the main contents of this brochure. But nowhere within the main body of text in this brochure does it actually say Reliant GTE or Reliant Scimitar GTE. It's always Scimitar GTE. And even the badging on the car, you've got a tiny badge there, but the main script across the front is Scimitar, and they were really pushing Scimitar GTE as its own brand, and sort of downplaying the Reliant connection. Perhaps there was still some sort of connotations of Reliant being for, you know, people wanting a cheap three-wheeled runaround, the plastic pig, as they were sort of slightly unfortunately titled back in the day. Was really, I mean, these were fibreglass, but that was about the only link they had with their three-wheel cousins. This particular brochure dates to September 1973, so this would be the SE5A version. The Scimitar GT came out in 1964, which was a different shape altogether and quite a nice looking car, with the Ford V6, the 3-litre V6 engine. That came out in 64 and ran until 1970, by which time the SE5 GTE had come out. That was in 1968. And the SE5 continued for 4 years until 1972, and then it was this car, the SE5A, came along, launched in 72, and that continued in production until 1975, by which time the fatter, longer, wider SE6 came along. But this, the subject of today's brochure review, is for the Reliant Scimitar GTE SE5A. I don't quite remember where this brochure came from, but I've had it a long time. So let's have a look inside it. So it's basically a series of questions and answers, and like I said, there's very little mention of the name Reliant. In fact, here we've got some comments from road test magazines, and it does appear, I think, down here somewhere, none in the same class as Reliant GTE. That was Auto Enthusiast magazine, but there's very little mention of the name Reliant anywhere in here. It's quite surprising. So, answer to the question, when are you considering a GTE? How many cars are on your shortlist? The answer, 1. It isn't easy buying a car. How, for instance, do you reconcile the educated taste for high-performance motoring with the practical workaday necessity of humping this and that from A to B? How can one and the same car carry 4 grown-ups in comfort at 3-figure speeds and turn in 20 to 28 miles per gallon? It seems impossible, and it very nearly is. You choose the GTE because in the end you can't choose anything else. No other car is like it, let alone a handmade, coach-built, high-performance car at a price that non-tax haven mortals can afford. There are 3 versions: the GTE manual, the Scimitar GTE overdrive, and the GTE automatic. And there's a photograph of a Scimitar there zooming along on possibly a Mira, somewhere like that. And on the opposite page we've got a nice colour picture of the GTE from behind. The earlier SE5 had separate rear reverse lamps, but for the SE5A they were incorporated in the main light clusters, apparently. And I've always thought the SE5, before it went fat and wide with the SE6, but I always thought the SE5 and the 5A were quite a handsome looking car with the chrome bumpers, very practical. The only other car I can think of was the Volvo P1800 ES, which had the sort of hatchback and the estate car vibe going on. But in terms of practical classics of cars of the late 60s, early 70s, there's a lot to be said for a Scimitar, I think. Huge load area, quite accessible, decent visibility, decent engine up front, a simple, reliable Ford engine. I think there's a lot going for them, and I think it's unfortunate really that the company was so associated with sort of three-wheelers and Rebels and Supervans and Regals and all that, that I don't think the Scimitar ever quite shifted the stigma of those sort of cheap and cheerful little runarounds that sort of potted around the roads of England. Prior to the SE4, and of course there was the Reliant Sabre as well, which was a lovely looking car, I think, and these followed along in their footsteps, if you like. So let's have a looky here. So, answer to the question, what is that you don't usually get in an estate car? Heart of the GTE's performance is a big lusty V6 engine by Ford. The power to weight ratio is excellent. The body, crisply styled by Ogle, is glass fibre, so the engine has only 2300 weight plus the contents of the car to pull. Autostrada cruising at around the 100 mark, you feel you are idling along. Maximum power is 135 brake horsepower net at 5000 RPM and 172 pounds-foot torque at 3000 RPM. 70 in top gear overdrive is at 2500 revs. In the automatic, it's at 3200 RPM. The dashboard has hooded anti-dazzle quick-to-read dials in function-related clusters, giving full information. There are piano key tumbler switches, hazard warning flasher, and telltale panel with warning lights for thermoelectric radiator fan, brake pads, brake fluid level and fuel reserve, tank capacity 17 gallons. On the centre console, force-fed fresh air nozzles for the whole car air change ventilation. The SE5A did receive a slightly reworked dashboard compared to the SE5, and if I'm honest, I think the dashboard and the interior is probably the weakest part of the whole car. Whereas from the outside it's quite a sleek looking machine and it's got a lusty V6 under the bonnet, but this does look a little bit kit carish to me. It's certainly well equipped. You've got a tacho, oil pressure, temperature, speedo, fuel gauge, clock and the voltmeter. Looks like a Radiomobile 8-track radio, 8-track player there. But I can't help but thinking it does look a bit low rent in the interior. It's a shame because it's well equipped, but I'm just not entirely sold on the style of it. But I guess it's a very, very subjective thing. Let's just see what the good motoring say about the car here in these comments. Performance of the latest Scimitar automatic is, in a word, fantastic, fabulous, and not so much very different from that of the overdrive model. Maximum speed is just on 120 miles an hour as against 123 miles an hour, and the 0 to 60 time is just on a second slower at 9.8 seconds against 8.9 seconds. So they were quite happy, as was Auto Enthusiast. Shattering acceleration through all the gears. Acceleration is still impressive to over the 100 miles an hour mark. At the bottom end of the power range, the car will perform happily in top gear at 30 miles an hour, and within this performance it returns an acceptable 28 to 30 miles for each gallon, which can't be bad. Let's go over here, see what we've got. Now the kids back from the school run. Again, just showing what a practical car this is, and I think they're quite a sleek looking car, especially on those alloys. So, answer to the question, what else is so special about the GTE and so important to the family man? Safety. And they go on to list several different, 20 features of the car related to safety. I don't think we'll go through all of those, but we've got superb road holding, acceleration and reserve of power when you need it, e.g. for safe overtaking, servo-assisted sure-footed brakes, discs at the front, wide tyres, anti-dazzle interior with anti-dazzle instruments and dipping rear-view mirror, early warning instrumentation in case of mechanical trouble, especially brake failure. Glass fibre bodywork which absorbs kinetic energy, so superficial damage is localised and bodywork distortion is less likely. Inertia reel front seat belts, etc, etc. Well, certainly quite a handsome machine, especially in its BRG paint finish. Let's carry on over here. There we are, showing off its practicality with the rear seats folded. Again, you can see what a spacious, airy cabin this is. I've never owned a Scimitar. I've never been in one, I don't think. So I'd be interested to hear comments from people who do actually run a Reliant Scimitar, whether it's the GTE SE5, SE5A, or even the SE6, or possibly the earlier SE4 Coupe. But it'd be quite interesting to hear some first-hand accounts, because it's one thing reading the magazines, but I think it's quite interesting to actually hear from people who've got first-hand experience of owning, running, maintaining one of these cars. And again, let's have a looky over here. So what else will the GTE carry at 123 miles per hour, apart from 4 people in comfort? Loads is the answer. From the front, the GT is an unmistakable high-performance car, and from the back, the way most road users see it, it's an equally unmistakable estate car. The rear window is heated with its own washer and wiper, and extends to the full width of the car, and opens at a touch on pneumatic rams. And inside, the whole width of the car is luggage deck. And they've got a few diagrams here of the various seating layouts you can have. So with 36 cubic feet available if you put the rear seats folded flat. Notice while you're at it that the back seats are proper back seats. The GTE is not a 2+2. And there is a tonneau cover to keep your luggage safe from prying eyes. Let's fold over again. And here we've got a chap and his young lady all dressed up for a night on the town by the look of it. Just about getting ready to go out. And the sumptuous interior. Answer to the question, what sort of ride ought you to get from a high-performance car? Civilised. There's nothing heroic about the GTE. It is unashamedly for comfort lovers. Without making any allowance at all for speed, it's an exceptionally pleasant and relaxing car to travel in. Even at 3-figure speeds, there is no sense of strain. There are two main reasons for this. First, the seats. These are designed not just to please the eye, but to contain the body in all the changing movements of high-speed motoring. Seldom will you have felt so secure, so comfortable, so well supported. Second is the quality of the ride. This is a car with outstanding road holding and cornering power. On a dry surface, it is almost impossible to unstick it, and the feeling of total control as you drive is something you cannot mistake. The GTE is a coach-built prestige motor car. No mention of Reliant still. Every copy is individually assembled, individually tested. It is gratifying in this day and age to see the sort of craftsmanship this produces. There we go. Parliament in the background. God bless them. And on the rear we have a rear view of the Scimitar GTE High Performance Estate. Again, no Reliant Scimitar here. The only mention is down here, the Reliant Motor Company Limited of Tamworth in Staffordshire, England. And this was printed in England, September 1973. And like I say, I think these are a very practical, very usable, everyday classic car, and it would be great to hear from anyone that runs a car, one of these Scimitars in that way. So hope that was of interest. Please check out the channel for more brochure reviews and other classic car content, and more videos like this will be coming along very soon. So that was the Scimitar GTE SE5A circa 1973. Thank you.